Welcome back. You're watching World 24/7 with me, Arjun, and these are your global talking points for the day. Trump's big comment on India trade deal says close to securing full trade access into India, much like Indonesia. The NATO chief issues big warning to China, India and Brazil, says 100% secondary sanctions for Russia trade partners. Jaishankar's sharp anti-terror pitch at SCO calls for uncompromising action against terrorism. Big relief for nurse Nimisha Priyas on death row in Yemen. Execution postponed until further notice. And after British Columbia, Canada's Alberta seeks terror label on Lawrence Bishnoi gang. We've got breaking news coming in from Punjab, where in a major breakthrough in the veteran marathon Forjar Singh hit-and-run case, the Punjab police have arrested one Amritpal Singh Dillon late Tuesday. Now, he's been identified as an NRI. Dillon was arrested in Kartarpur, which also happens to be his hometown. He'd in fact recently returned from Canada and was the one driving the SUV at the time of the accident. Furthermore, Dillon has admitted that 114-year-old Forjar Singh was indeed hit by his car in Punjab's Jalandhar. He further told police that the accident happened while he was returning home after selling his phone in Bhogpur area. Meanwhile, my colleague Gurpreet joins us for latest on this. Gurpreet, what's the latest you're picking up, and what has the accused in fact told the cops?
Well, we have seen the police was not able to get any CCTV camera footage, but they were able to get some parts of damaged vehicle, which were the main lead for the police to get this case investigated. We have seen from that specific part, they were able to find out the make of the vehicle, and finally, late in the evening, we have seen they have already got the registration number of that vehicle. What we have learned when they had conducted a raid, they have already arrested the accused, who is also NRI, and now they are trying to explore more angles. But it's very clear that the vehicle was very at a high speed when it met with an accident, and Forjar Singh Sarari, who is the iconic runner, he was being killed by hitting on the road, which is this accident which has been taken place on the national highway that is from Pathankot to Jalandhar. So let's see that how the investigation will be unfolded. But as of now, what we have learned, the accused has been arrested by the police, and further investigation is already underway.
Thank you so much for getting us the latest there. Moving on now, President Donald Trump has said the US is now close to securing a full trade access to India. Now, that's something he claims America has never had before. He said we're going to have access into India, and also added that we had no access into any of these countries, and now we do because of what we are doing with tariffs. Now, Trump did not give full details, but framed it as a major breakthrough, adding that past US administrations have failed to, in fact, open Indian markets. New Delhi is a fast-growing economy and a key player in tech, manufacturing, and even pharmaceuticals. Now, full trade access could very well mean huge opportunities for American businesses. Now, Trump also hinted more deals are coming, saying access to global markets is being unlocked one by one.
So we made a deal with Indonesia. I spoke to their really great president, very popular, very strong, smart, and we made the deal. We have full access to Indonesia, everything. As you know, Indonesia is very strong on copper, but we have full access to everything. We will pay no tariffs. So they are giving us access into Indonesia, which we never had. That's probably the biggest part of the deal. India basically is working along that same line. We're going to have access into India. And you have to understand, we had no access into any of these countries. Our people couldn't go in. And now we're getting access because of what we're doing with the tariffs. So they're paying 19% and we are not paying anything.
Well, my colleague Rishabh joins us for more on this. Rishabh, is there any statement you're picking up from the Indian side? And, we heard Trump then. Why is he saying that there has never been such access when it comes, speaking about India?
Right, Arjun, a pretty major statement coming in from Donald Trump last night. And this gives us some sort of an idea on what an India-US trade deal might look like. This is the sort of negotiations that have been going on, but clearly US very much batting for full access to Indian market. That is something that is that is one of their top requirements from this trade deal. But a little deep dive into what the deal with Indonesia looks like. There is a 19% tariff on Indonesian goods. That means that any Indonesian goods entering the US will have to pay 19%, but any US goods entering Indonesia will have to pay 0%. And what Trump has said is that a deal with India will work on the same lines. That means we can expect a sub 20% tariff that Indian goods will have to pay to enter US. But clearly, US is batting for a zero or a nil tariff when it comes to US goods entering India. So we could see something like that, some equation like that coming up in the India-US trade deal. It is true that India's markets have been highly regulated so far. Access has been very highly regulated, but that is something that the Trump administration is looking to break via these new trade deals. We're seeing that in the run-up to August 1st, talks have intensified. Indian negotiators are in Washington as we speak, and we're getting more and more details, and we will hear on some sort of a mini trade deal or an interim trade deal by August 1st.
Well, thanks there for putting things in perspective. Rishabh, a mini trade deal, of course, expected by the 1st of August. Now, shifting gears here, but staying with US. Now, in a sharp warning Tuesday, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has said countries like China, India and Brazil could face crippling secondary sanctions if they keep doing business with Russia. Now, Rutte was speaking on Capitol Hill after meeting with US senators. He said the message is clear: call Putin, push for peace, or face the fallout. Now, this warning follows President Donald Trump's announcement of massive new weapon support for Ukraine and a bold 50-day ultimatum to Moscow. If there's no peace deal, buyers of Russian exports could face as much as 100% tariffs. Meanwhile, Senator Tom Tillis praised the move but raised red flags over the 50-day delay, saying it could give Putin time to murder, gain ground, and then bargain from strength again. Meanwhile, Rutte emphasized Europe is all in, footing the bill for the new US weapons, from air defense systems to missiles and even ammunition this time. Final decisions, however, on long-range weapons are still in the works. Now, this marks a sharp global escalation and comes as a clear message to Russia's top trading partners.
If Russia is not serious about peace talks, within 50 days, he will slam secondary sanctions on countries like India, China and Brazil. So my encouragement to these three countries particularly is, if you live now in Beijing or in Delhi, or you are the president of Brazil, you might want to take a look into this, because this might hit you very hard. So please make the phone call to Vladimir Putin and tell him that he has to get serious about peace talks, because otherwise this will slam back on Brazil, on India and on China in a massive way.
At the Shanghai Cooperation Organization's foreign ministers meeting in China, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar made it clear that the fight against terrorism must be non-negotiable. Citing the April 22 Pahalgam attack, where 26 civilians were targeted and killed, Jaishankar said the assault was aimed at derailing Kashmir's fragile tourism economy and sowing religious discord. With foreign ministers from across the region present, including Pakistan's Ishaq Dar, Jaishankar did not hold back. Viewers, he urged SCO countries to act together and bring those responsible to justice. The EM's message could not be clearer. The SCO was built to fight terrorism, separatism and extremism. It must now live up to that purpose. Now, this all comes before world leaders, including PM Modi, gather in Tianjin for the SCO Leaders Summit. And the execution of Nimisha Priya has been postponed with hectic parleys underway in Yemen in a last-ditch effort to in fact save the nurse from Kerala who was sentenced to death by local authorities for killing a man who was harassing her. Priya's execution was scheduled for today, July 16th, viewers, but it has now emerged that the murdered man's family has finally been convinced to postpone it till further notice. However, this does not mean she would be released or be sent back to India. She is currently in Sana'a, the Houthi-held capital of Yemen. Meanwhile, New Delhi does not have any sort of diplomatic relations with the Houthi rebels.
यमन में एक कत्ल हुआ, वो कत्ल के बाद कोर्ट में जाके केस हुआ। वो केस में एक औरत का नाम है निमिषा प्रिया, वो नॉन मुस्लिम है। वो ये औरत को कत्ल करने का हुक्म हुआ है। वहाँ का वलमा से बोल दिया इस्लाम में कत्ल के बजाय दियत देना, कवद देना, ये भी है।
A judicial order has been passed by the Yemen judicial system, means postponing the execution proceedings against Ms. Nimisha Priya until further orders. So now we have got the breathing time, and we would be proceeding with the negotiations with the victim's family, and we can pursue the victim's family with our offers, and we are ready to tender our unconditional apology to the victim's family and seeking pardon from the victim's family by paying the blood money. So yes, we are hopeful we can save Nimisha Priya from the gallows by effective negotiation process.
My colleague Ghazali joins us for more on this. Ghazali, literally an 11th hour decision there, the postponement or the scrapping, in fact, of that death sentence. How does the road ahead look for Nimisha Priya?
See, the family of the victim, Talal al-Mahdi, his family, local tribal leaders, and the Yemeni cleric who was contacted by this Kerala-based Grand Mufti, and the officials of the Indian Embassy in Saudi Arabia, they are all in touch. Hectic negotiations went on to postpone this scheduled execution, which is scheduled for today. She has got a reprieve. She has not been released yet. Further also, talks will go on. Perhaps the family will be convinced to pardon Nimisha Priya as a goodwill gesture, but that road is really tough ahead. But Indian Embassy officials, as well as this Grand Mufti who has contributed a lot by contacting his counterpart in Yemen, they are all hopeful that perhaps a long time has also passed since this crime was committed, and there was no long-term enmity. Nimisha Priya was not a Yemeni citizen as well. Under certain circumstances, she was forced to take such extreme step. So that is why they are all hopeful that perhaps they have now got more time. Negotiations will go on, talks will go on to convince the family to grant pardon to Nimisha Priya.
Well, thank you so much for that, Ghazali. And with that, it's time we slip into a short break. Much more on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching World 24/7, and we shift our focus to Canada, where in a strong push for national security, Alberta has joined British Columbia in urging the federal government to label the India-based Lawrence Bishnoi gang as a terrorist organization. Premier Daniel Smith and Public Safety Minister Mike Ellis say the gang is a dangerous transnational network involved in extortion, targeted killings, and even drug trafficking right in Canada's heart. Now, this move comes amid rising concerns about threat to South Asian communities in Alberta, British Columbia, and also Ontario. Meanwhile, Edmonton's interim police chief has backed the call, saying the step would give police powerful new tools to dismantle such networks. Alberta is sending a clear message: you're not welcome here. Meanwhile, federal action could also unlock stronger law enforcement powers, which might be essential in fighting a gang whose global ties are now hitting the Canadian streets. My colleague Maha Siddiqui joins us for more on this straight from Vancouver. Maha, double-barrel question here for you. Now, what specific incidents in Alberta are being linked to Bishnoi gang's operations? And also, what would change practically for law enforcement if this gang is officially labelled a terrorist entity?
So the first question with regards to what crimes have they been accused of in Canada, remember there was a firing outside singer AP Dillon's house here in Canada that was linked to the Lawrence Bishnoi gang, and the killing last year of a gangster here in Canada itself was also linked to inter-gang rivalry here in Canada, in which the Lawrence Bishnoi gang's name came up. This is apart from the fact that the Premier of British Columbia around 2 weeks ago had said that there have been threats and extortion calls to a lot of businessmen, business people rather, the business community, not just in British Columbia, but also in Ontario and Alberta. And he linked those to these gangsters, specifically the Lawrence Bishnoi gang, saying he's writing to Prime Minister Mark Carney, asking the Lawrence Bishnoi gang to be listed as a terrorist organization, which now the Alberta Premier, Daniel Smith, as well as the Public Safety Minister, has also said they've been backed by the interim Edmonton Police Chief as well. And here's where the answer to your second question comes. He says that this will provide them more tools as well as more power to act against crimes of this nature, crimes that are now spilling out on the streets in certain parts in Canada, especially where there is a high proportion of South Asian community. And this is a matter of public security now that both Alberta and British Columbia want to be tackled at the federal level.
Now, you very interestingly there mentioned the threat to the South Asian community. How are community members and even leaders reacting to the proposed terrorist designation in Alberta?
At least in British Columbia, the thrust or the pressure that has come on the Premier, on the NDP government here to take this matter up with the federal government, with Prime Minister Mark Carney, has come from complaints from the business community itself. The business community has been conveying to the government here, the administration here, that they feel threatened, that extortion calls are not allowing them to work with peace and flourish in this in certain specific pockets, as I already mentioned. And therefore, the thrust has come from the business community. They are the ones who have been pushing for action to be taken against these gangs. And while the governments here need to brace up and act against some of the crimes that have happened here most recently in British Columbia, where we have seen a crime taking place outside the Caps Cafe, Kapil Sharma's cafe in Surrey. These are crimes that the Canadian federal government as well as the Canadian provincial governments need to crack down on. But so far, the British Columbia Premier also believes that to tackle this issue more effectively, this organization, this group of gangsters, the Lawrence Bishnoi gang, needs to be listed as a terrorist organization.
Thank you so much for your inputs there, Maha. Now we shift focus back to Southeast Asia, where West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee has said that eminent filmmaker Satyajit Ray's ancestral home in Dhaka is being demolished by Bangladeshi authorities. However, the government of India has stepped up to cooperate with the government of Bangladesh to repair and reconstruct this ancestral property. The centuries-old house, as you see on your screens right now, in Dhaka's Hori Kishore Ray Chaudhary Road, belonged to Ray's grandfather, in fact, the renowned litterateur Upendra Kishore Ray Chaudhary. Now, in response, New Delhi has offered to step in and work with Bangladesh to restore and preserve the historic site. Meanwhile, recognizing its cultural significance and deep ties to the Bengal Renaissance, New Delhi has also proposed turning the property into a museum, celebrating literature and the shared heritage of both the nation that dates back all the way, for perspective, to 1971. In a statement, the Indian government said it would prefer a reconsideration of the demolition and is ready to cooperate fully in restoring this iconic landmark. Meanwhile, in Israel, the ultra-Orthodox party, the United Torah Judaism, says it's quitting the Netanyahu government. Now, this comes as it is furious over a bill that would end draft exemptions for seminary students. The move comes as Israel's Supreme Court rules ultra-Orthodox Israelis must serve in the military. It's a deeply divisive issue, especially with the war in Gaza draining army resources. Meanwhile, Netanyahu now has 48 hours to salvage his coalition. If not, he'll be left with a razor-thin majority and a growing pressure from far-right partners who oppose any Gaza ceasefire. Truce talks, meanwhile, with Hamas continue, but there's been no deal reached yet. With the war raging and his government wobbling, Netanyahu's future is indeed looking more uncertain than it has ever before.
A key partner of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says it is pulling out of his coalition government. Now, this decision by the United Torah Judaism Party does not mean that the government is going to collapse right away, but it does complicate Netanyahu's ability to govern and especially to negotiate a ceasefire agreement with Hamas in the Gaza Strip. The UTJ is an ultra-Orthodox religious party, and it objects to efforts in Parliament to end exemptions from military service given to young religious men. This system of exemptions is controversial in Israel, and it has grown increasingly controversial during the past nearly 2 years while the country is at war. Netanyahu has about 48 hours to try to seek some sort of compromise with the UTJ, but if they do pull out of the government, he will be left with a narrow majority in Parliament. That means that he will be even more reliant on hardline partners who oppose major concessions to Hamas in these ongoing ceasefire talks. That makes it more difficult for Netanyahu to maneuver in these negotiations.
And well, over in Washington, Donald Trump is now calling on the Justice Department to release all credible files related to Jeffrey Epstein. But he says the final call rests with Attorney General Pam Bondi. Speaking at the White House Tuesday, Trump said Bondi has handled it very well, but repeated his claim that many of the Epstein files were in fact made up by Democrats. Now, that's a shift from his campaign trail promises to probably release everything now. Trump now faces a rare backlash from his own base. Also, some MAGA supporters are actually accusing the administration of covering up key details to protect powerful elites. Even top Republicans like House Speaker Mike Johnson and Trump's daughter-in-law Lara Trump are demanding more transparency in the matter. Meanwhile, tensions are rising inside the administration as well. Sources say Deputy FBI Director Dan Muningo is considering resignation after clashing with Bondi over whether an Epstein client list even exists or not. The Justice Department insists there is no list, no blackmail ring, and that Epstein died by suicide in 2019. But with right-wing influencers keeping their pressure on, this controversy isn't going away anytime soon. Now, meanwhile, President Trump has denied ever visiting Epstein's island and also says Pam Bondi has in fact told him his name is not in any file, if they so exist.
The Attorney General's handled that very well. She's really done a very good job. No, she's given us just a very quick briefing, and in terms of the credibility of the different things that they've seen, and I would say that, these files were made up by Comey, they were made up by Obama, they were made up by the Biden.
And in a significant development following the global controversy over Prada's Kolhapuri-inspired sandals, a high-level team from the luxury fashion house has arrived in Kolhapur to initiate groundwork for a potential collaboration with local artists. You heard that right. This is the first of a two-part visit by the brand, which had come under fire only last month for showcasing sandals that closely resembled the Kolhapuris at the Milan Spring-Summer 2026 show, without acknowledging the crafts origins or India's artisan community as well. Now, the first team visited the Jawahar Nagar area, known for producing traditional Kolhapuri footwear, and also interacted with local artisans. The second delegation, meanwhile, is expected in the first week of August. It will include Prada's global business head, global communications head, and other senior corporate leaders. Meanwhile, listen in to one of the artisans the Prada team met.
आज प्राडा की टीम आई थी जिसमें उनके 5 लोग आए थे टेक्निकल टीम से, और उन्होंने बहुत सारी हमारे कोल्हापुरी चप्पल की डिजाइन्स देखी, हमारे कोल्हापुरी चप्पल कैसी बनती है वो भी हमने दिखाया। हमारे जो कुशल कारागिरी है उन्होंने सब दिखाया कि चप्पल हम कैसे बनाते, कैसे सिलाई करते हैं। तो उनके पैर में पहनाने के बाद उनको वो अच्छी लगी और उन्होंने वो एक चप्पल खरीदी भी। और हमारी यही अपेक्षा है कि जब भी आगे काम चलेगा तो प्राड़ा हमारे कोल्हापुर से वो चप्पलें खरीदे और उनके प्राड़ा शोरूम पे वो सेल करें और कोल्हापुर का नाम हमारे जग भर में जाए।